It's really great to see you. How are you today?
Doing pretty well, Joe. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being in my podcast series, which is about formidable females in future flight. I'm meeting women from across the future of aviation and aerospace to help inspire other women to consider this sector for their own careers. Megan, you are one of not many female electric powertrain leaders in aerospace, so I'm really excited to talk with you. Thank you again for being my guest today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So, Megan, you're a powertrain leader with Supernal. Just in case anyone who's listening is not that familiar with the business, could you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Sure. So Supernal is working on a vehicle to bring urban air mobility to the market. So looking at intra-city transportation, short commutes within 50 miles from points of interest within the city. So trying to capture the urban supercommuter, if you will, through air essentially. So the idea being that it would be very similar to Uber in terms of a ride-hailing service, and you would get on a vehicle, go point to point, and then be able to complete the final mile either through public transportation or walking, or even a service like Uber to help you get to your final destination.
Fantastic. I can think of lots of locations already where that sounds like just the thing. And can you tell me a little bit about your background? What inspired you to originally become an aerospace engineer?
Well, I grew up in a town in Texas that has the largest U.S. Army airfield in the world. So there was always very interesting aircraft flying in and out. Also, every year they had a really awesome air show because of that. And I saw the Blue Angels fly one time when I was younger, and that really just captured my excitement and my inspiration, and it really got my mind curious about the physics of flight and how it actually works. When I got to high school and took physics for the first time, I finally understood, the fundamental principles of how aircraft actually fly. And from that moment, I was hooked. And then it was just a pretty easy transition into college and picking a degree, and then just staying with it through the whole time, just kind of being rooted in that fundamental theory of how lift is generated on a moving body.
Brilliant. And how have you gone about building your career? What's been your path to get to your current role?
I meandered a little bit, but also in retrospect, maybe not so much meandering as it was kind of predestined, is what it feels like sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
I started my career with Textron in the leadership development program, which was a 3-year program for new entry young engineers into the business. It was their way of not only giving young engineers very impactful projects right up front, to kind of basically just throw them into the deep end to get them acclimated very quickly to the industry, but it was also a way for them to expose us to different aspects of their business, which is quite diverse. One of their companies is Bell Helicopter, which is where I ended up after the program was completed. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by rotorcraft, and had a really hard time convincing myself that I'd be happy doing anything else that doesn't take off vertically and land vertically.
Brilliant. And it sounds like you've had a lot of fun. Do you think that being female has in any way affected your experience or affected any of the decisions that you've made?
I would I would say yes. In general, I've there aren't a lot of women, first of all, in this industry. When I look back on my days at university, I was in a program. The airspace program is only about 75 people, and of those 75, there were only about 11 women. And I think there was about 10 or 11 that actually graduated in my class with me. So I'm not sure what the future classes coming in behind us looked like, but even just kind of that stark demographic was pretty telling, and pretty I would say eye opening, just kind of going in and knowing what to expect, and who kind of your cohort is going to be when we actually get into the workspace. Um, So when I actually started my career, I was the only female of, a company of about 40 engineers, including all the various levels of leadership within it. And that was like a pretty defining moment where it was like, okay, this is really how it is. I thought the demographic was bad in university, but now this is actually how it is. And one thing that I tried really hard to do with my career was make sure that I stayed as closely engaged to the technical. I feel that women, whether it's through shying away or just wanting to feel comfortable with the skill sets that we are best at, which is organizational type of engineering skills. I wanted to make sure that I also focused hard on the points where I was weakest, which was on the technical, and tried not to gravitate towards levels of comfort with my career choices. And I think overall there's a lot of hard work up front, and quite frankly there is kind of day-to-day hard work to just make sure I stay sharp on the technical side, especially in this new and evolving industry, which doesn't have a lot of data available or past experiences available to go pull from. It's even more critical to just kind of be a natural learner and focus in and make sure that not necessarily that you have to be the smartest technical person in the room, but that you're able to hold your own and ask intelligent questions. And I think I was very intentional about making sure I drove my career in that direction, rather than say getting into systems engineering or project engineering, which is fields that women in engineering most likely gravitate towards. Um, and I think, like I said, I think it's gotten me to where I am today, and working in a very exciting field with no regrets.
So Megan, it's incredible that you've really followed your passion in the technical aspects of engineering, and I can really see how taking yourself out of your comfort zone has helped you to progress. And I wondered how you feel now today, now that you've reached a leadership role and you're managing other people. Um, how do you feel as a female leader? Do you think there's any advantages or disadvantages?
Well, certainly, women bring a certain skill set to the table, and
Mhm.
there's a wealth of advantages to that. Patience, attention to detail. I mean, these are all the things, for example, that the Central Intelligence Agency goes after women for. Um, so, certainly there are those aspects, and I think there's an element of being able to build relationships, especially through technical friction, which especially when you're developing new stuff, there's a lot of, and there can be hurt feelings and things like that, and being able to
Mhm.
kind of just manage expectations, manage emotions, manage feelings in those types of situations, I think is a skill set that I bring to the table within my organization. But in general, I would say, aside from that, I don't really notice too many other differences. I think I've done a good job of earning the respect of people around me, both my peers as well as leadership above me and the people on my team. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it really comes down to, right? It's just knowing that or making sure that your team knows that they can depend on you, they can trust you, they that they can value your opinion because you've done work to come to the table with good questions or good ideas or good inputs. And I think really at the end of the day, engineers are very practical people, and that's all they really care about, right? They just want to make sure they have a good teammate besides them, and it makes it in a lot of ways probably a lot easier to acclimate as a female engineer than perhaps other industries.
Yes, yeah, for sure. A genuine meritocracy.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And do you think you need to be a certain type of woman to succeed in male-dominated spaces?
I don't necessarily think so. I think
Mm,
certainly I'd be lying if you know, I didn't admit that my interests, which are probably more aligned to the interests of the guys, hasn't helped along the way, right? So when they get into
mm,
water cooler talk about, you know, cars and why things work the way they work, I like to hear them talk and geek out with them and ask them questions. And I think naturally
mm,
that is probably quicker to build a relationship. But again, engineers, man, female, non-binary, whatever, they just want to make sure that they got someone that knows what they're doing, and that they can rely upon. And certainly there's, like I said, there's maybe a little bit less of a learning curve if you are a certain type of female, but I don't think it's something that can't be overcome. And my experience, I've never seen that with myself or with other women that I've worked alongside that have been left out, so to speak, because they didn't necessarily prescribe to a certain bucket of interest, or a certain way of talking, or a certain way of being. So I think there's a place for everyone in engineering, which is part of what makes it such a fun place.
Yeah. That's so good to hear, Megan. And I'm so happy for everything that you've achieved and continue to enjoy in your own career. Um, as a last question, I wondered if there's anything that you would say to women or other underrepresented groups who are thinking of pursuing this career path. What would you say to them?
Oh, I would just tell them to be brave. So just
Hmm.
reach out, make yourself uncomfortable, um, intentionally force yourself to not gravitate towards faces and people that look like you. And I think overall, that's what, I mean, not just engineering, but I think that's what the world needs, right? I mean, certainly engineering, when you're working on hard problems, and there aren't clear solutions, you need that diversity of thought, and that comes from a different background, right? That comes from a different level of education, a different place of education, comes from different life experiences, different interests, and there's a place there for you. You just got to be brave enough to reach out and step into it, and grit through the learning curve that you're definitely bound to encounter. And I think a little bit of grace goes a long way as well in those moments. You may be alongside guys that are making it look easy, but you're not sure if they're not struggling in the same way you are to keep pace, or to learn the things that they need to learn to be good at their job and effective at their job. So like I said, just be brave and make yourself uncomfortable, and I think you'll find that the reward is well worth it when you get to the other end of that hardship, and look back at all you've accomplished, and all how much you've grown as a individual and as a professional.
That's really sound advice. Thank you so much, Megan, for joining me today. And all the very best of luck to you with the rest of your very exciting career.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's great talking with you.
Thank you.